Okay, tell me about your family.
What about my family? My 3 kids and...
No, when you were a little girl growing up.
Oh, I don't know what to tell. There's so much. I used to run to the post office every day, run to the store to get round steak. I swept the church house every Saturday.
How old were you then?
I was about 15.
That was during World War II?
No, it was after World War. It was after the war. 15 or 16. Yeah, it was after the war. Because I was 10 years old. Yeah, it was after the war. I was 10 when World War II started. It was on a Sunday, I remember. I had a girlfriend next door. We walked around the little town.
Do you have electricity in your house?
Oh yeah, we had electricity. We had space heaters. Yeah, we had electricity. When I was in school.
Tap dancing?
Yeah. We took tap dancing. They took a movie of us at the local theater. They said I had the prettiest legs of the bunch.
Yeah?
I served lunch at the school cafeteria when I was a senior. Junior and senior, I think.
You say you were hand-raised?
I was hand-raised. They did everything for me, except I did go to the store for them a lot, and I did go to the post office twice today to get the mail. But other than that, I was hand-raised. If I couldn't figure out my math problems, they said, you go help Joyce. You go help her. And now go help her as soon as she gets that right. And when I was sick, my father used to sit by my bed for an hour at a time, feeling my head to see if I had a fever. He was always giving me medicine and putting a drop of kerosene in it to keep me from coughing.
Kerosene?
Yeah. They'd give you a spoon of something, some kind of liquid, and then they'd put a drop of kerosene in it to keep you from coughing.
Did it work?
Yeah, I guess it did. It was old-timey. It was a Cajun deal, you know.
A Cajun deal?
Yes.
Cajun remedy?
Yeah, Cajun remedy. And my uncles from Louisiana would come in their big fancy Lincoln Continentals to visit us. And
that was down in Stoll?
Yep. And also I know one time I was working, after I started working for Uncle James, my uncle from Houston, who owned a filling station, he came by there when it was time for me to get off work and took me to my mother's to spend the night, then took me back to work the next morning. And what?
In what?
Huh?
In what?
In their car.
What kind of car was it?
Oh, I imagine it was a fancy car. They didn't have any children. It was Uncle Roy and Aunt Carrie. She was red-headed, real sweet. They used to have a fig tree in their front yard. And my mother and I would go visit them every once in a while. My sister would take us across the ferry, and then they would pick us up. And then we'd go to Houston for like 3 or 4 days. And I remember when I graduated out of high school, she gave me a watch for graduation. And I thought it was real sweet of them to come pick me up one day. I didn't even know they were coming. But when I was little, I didn't have to do very much except see that the yard was clean, picked up the stuff off if there was any stuff in the yard. I had a little playmate that lived across the street. I remember her mother used to come at our house every morning and sit on a chair right in front of the door and talk for like an hour or two. And then she'd go home. And her daughter would stay and play with me all day, except when I had to go to the store for Mom, because the store is just 2 blocks away, and she'd send me at least 4 times a day. She'd forget her cigarettes, or she'd forget she needed steak for dinner and stuff like that. I had a bunch of sweet sisters. In the summertime, I'd go visit them for a month at a time. Then that's when I'd get to go bowling or something like that.
And they thought you had TB or something?
They thought I did, but we found out I didn't, because when your daddy and I had our chest x-rayed when we were in Colorado, he had scars all over his lungs, and I didn't have a scar one.
How come he had scars all over his lungs?
I don't know. He must have been sick a lot when he was a kid. Of course, his mother didn't make all that much money, and I guess I don't know why he had scars all over his lungs, but they said he had scars all over his lungs. And that was when he was, I don't know what year it was. It was 55. Because, no, 56. It was in 56. She'd already been born.
Was that when he took off and you tracked him down?
Oh, no. He went up to Dallas, Fort Worth, to find him a job.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't like what he was offered, so he decided he'd just go and hunt for uranium and stuff like that, because he was an engineer geologist, and he wanted to go do that. And so he thought, well, I was right with my mom and daddy. I went over there with my mom and daddy while he went to look for work in Fort Worth. And then I called one day, and Jerry said, oh, well, he wanted to go up to Colorado and see what he could find. So, about a month later, I got a letter from him, and I got his address, and I just went up to Momma and got me a ticket and took off and sent him a telegram and said, I'll be in on the train a certain date. And he was there. No, he wasn't there. He was out of town on a job. His boss and his wife met me at the train station and took me to the rooming house where he was living. Then we lived in it was called, I don't know, some kind of court. It was a motel thing that they rented out families in the wintertime, because they didn't have very many customers that would come through there. And we stayed all winter there for $100 a month, and then we got us a house. We rented us a house across town.
That 1220 Orchard Avenue?
No, this was in, let's see, I don't even remember the little...
Fruta.
What?
Fruta.
No, that was where Beth was born. No, it was just a little bit old, it was across town from where we lived. It was just this man had built 3 houses, and he rented one to us for, I don't know how much, $75 or whatever. And then Jim got a job out of town, but I stayed in town for about a year, and then his boss called and said he wanted him to go to Fry Canyon, Utah. And they had brand new trailer houses there. And you and Marie were born. Marie was just a baby, I think, just a little boy. And so we left this house and we moved out to Fry Canyon. And then I stayed out there. Well, you and I went to, my mother was sick, and you and I flew to Momma to see her. And a friend of ours that lived in the trailer thing kept Marie. She was just about 6 months old. And we stayed there in Winnie a couple of weeks. Then I flew back. And then, I don't know what happened, but we rented a house in Grand Junction, which was Orchard Avenue. But Daddy still lived at Fry Canyon. You know, he'd come in every 2 or 3 weeks. And he did that for 4 or 5 years, and then they made him up. He went out all over after that. They closed that down, and he went to Nevada and New Mexico and all the western states trying to buy ore or whatever for the company until Texaco and New Jersey Zinc dissolved, and then Jimmy was shipped to Gilman. But he worked out of town for 9 years.